Hey folks, how you all doing? So today I will be ranking 23 studio albums by Nick Cave. So 1979's debut album Door Door by The Boys Next Door through to 2019's Ghostin by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. I won't be doing his two most recent albums, Nick Cave and Warren Ellis with Carnage, simply because I haven't had it that long, probably about 9 to 10 months, maybe a year, and I really haven't listened to that one enough to put that in my rankings. Plus also the latest one released a couple of months ago by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, which is Avant Guard. But I will rank the other 23 albums, as I said, from 1979's Door Door by The Boys Next Door right through to Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds 2019 Ghostin, which is a period of 40 years. Every Nick Cave fan has a different top 10. We all love Nick Cave, but you won't find 10 people with exactly the same top 10 like you would with some artists, say like Bob Dylan, I guess, the Beatles, for example. Most people's favourites are always there in that one little upper echelon. Most people's weakest albums are in the bottom, but Nick Cave seems to be a strange mix. Everyone has their favourite era, their favourite style, etc, etc. So we're never going to agree, but we're all Nick Cave fans. So leave your positive comments in the comment section below, please, on what your rankings are. Anyway, we'll start at number 23 on my list. I have The Birthday Party by The Birthday Party. This was released in 1980. It's punky, it's grungy, it has guitar driven and guitar drenched feedback, lots of Old Testament imagery throughout this album. To put it simply, it's amplified noise with a capital N. Not overly impressed with this album, although it did cost Lynn a fair penny to actually find this one for me. But yeah, it's really not great Nick Cave to me. To other people it might be. This one comes in at 2.5 out of 10 for me, sadly. Number 22 on my list, we go to 1981, Birthday Party, Prayers on Fire. This album sounds just like a group of teenagers picking up instruments for the first time. It's a garbled mess of surrealistic noise, sadly. Really not a fan of this, really not a fan of Birthday Party. Their music is just it's too heavy and too messy for me. This album comes in at 2.8 out of 10. With my last comments, it's not really surprising to figure out that number 21 on my list is going to be Junkyard by The Birthday Party. This was released in 1982. This was Birthday Party's final album before Nick Cave and a couple of these members went on to become Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. It sounds scratchy and rushed. There's a deliberate trebly sound with this album, very little bass, but it fits the chaotic heathen nature of the album, just that trebly sound. It's something I don't like. I like a balanced sound with my music. Couple of good songs on here like there are on the previous two albums, but nothing outstanding in my opinion. Do love the album cover. This album comes in at 3.2 out of 10. Next on my list at number 20 we go to Your Funeral, My Trial. 1986 gothic rock, art rock, alt rock, ballads. So many styles make this this sound like a disorganized album. It doesn't flow very well in my opinion, but it is still packed with some pretty decent songs, and this one does come in as a pass mark, 6 out of 10. Number 19 on my list, we go to 2001, Grinder Man. This is the first Grinder Man album. Garage rock, alt rock. This is a bit like Grinder Man's albums, the two albums, a bit like Nick Cave going through his David Bowie Tin Machine period. getting away from what he's good at to do something heavy, grungy, hard. Not a fan of his heavier guitar driven music, which is what you've just seen with all the birthday party albums. When he does that sort of band rock type stuff, they are just songs. You don't get the lyrical poetry that you expect from Nick Cave on these sort of things. Say it's a bit like Bob Dylan in the 1980s. He really went away from his lyrical genius to produce rock pop albums, Empire Burlesque, Down the Groove, etc. And that's what I really don't like about Nick Cave. But this album is decent, comes in at 6.5 out of 10. Number 18 on my list, we go to 2013's Push the Sky Away. This was the first of his so-called ambient / electronica trilogy. There's loads of synths, there's loads of loops, there's drum machines. Lyrically it's still a very Nick Cave album, but I do struggle with this one at times. Quite often I'll put this one on and turn it off. I just can't listen to it all the way through, even though all the songs are passable. There's nothing really wrong with the songs. I guess I just still can't get my head around the electronica, ambient stuff, Avant Guard stuff that's associated with the music of this album. Yet I can with the other two in the trilogy, so go figure. 6.6 out of 10. Number 17 on my list, Nocturama, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, 2003. Written and recorded in just over a week, so it's not a carefully planned album that you would expect from Nick Cave. His albums are very precise. There's reason behind everything he does in every song, but this album just seems very rushed. It's not a go-to album, as I said. It's not a polished album. It's not well constructed. It is an album and it's doing its purpose of a straight in there, write and record it live and get it out. But that's not the style I like with Nick Cave. I like polished Nick Cave. Still does come in at 6.9 out of 10, which is still a pretty good score. At number 16 on my list, we have the second Grinderman album, called Grinderman 2. This was released in 2010. As I said, it's the second Grinderman album. It follows the same grunge rock, art rock, alt rock sounds of Grinderman. It is not quite as heavy though as Grinderman. Is slightly more melodic throughout, and it does contain Nick Cave's best line ever. In fact, probably the best line ever written in a song, and that's on the track Palaces of Montezuma, and the line is: "The spinal cord of JFK wrapped in Marilyn Monroe's negligee I give to you." I mean, what a perfect line for a love song. Come on, it's pure genius. Who else could think of that besides Nick Cave, a line like that? Probably Dylan, maybe Cohen, but that's about it. Sheer genius. And that song alone is why this song ranks at number 16 and probably not a bit lower. It comes in at 7 out of 10. Number 15 on my list, we're going to go back to 1986, Kicking Against the Pricks. This is his covers album. There's covers on here: Velvet Underground, Jimmy Webb, Glenn Campbell, Johnny Cash, The Seekers, Gene Pitney, a traditional gospel song, but it's all interpreted the way Nick Cave sees the songs, not just complete rip-offs of the original. Nick Cave does these songs his ways. I'm not generally a fan of covers albums because most people just cover them note for note, melody for melody. Nick Cave does it different. Nick Cave is just Nick Cave, and he only does things his way. So it is a reasonable album. It does come in at 7 out of 10 for me. Number 14 on my list, we go back even further to 1984. From Her to Eternity. This one's avant-garde, experimental rock, blues rock and punk. It's so imperfect in so many ways, yet seems to work perfectly as an album. It's visceral and exciting. A really good debut album by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Obviously he's had 4 albums before this, the Boy Next Door and the 3 with Birthday Party, but as a band, this is a really solid debut. Comes in at 7.7 out of 10. Every album from here on in I absolutely love. So that's 13 albums I love from here on in, by the way. Number 13 on my album, we go to 1990, The Good Son. There you are, The Good Son. Bit, I guess, alternative cabaret would be a good word for this, and blues. The opening track is based on a Brazilian hymn. The title track takes its chant from a gospel hymn, and it's about Cain and Abel from the Bible, the good son, the bad son, blah blah blah, etc, etc. It's a typical dark album from Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, and there's a hell of a lot of religious references throughout. A really, really good album. Yeah, the title track is probably one of the best on here. The Weeping song, the Ship song. Go listen to them. Absolutely brilliant tracks I've just mentioned there. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, The Good Son, comes in at 7.8 out of 10. Next up, album number 12 in my list, we go to 2016. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, Skeleton Tree. This is the second of his ambient / avant-garde / electronica albums. Push the Sky Away was the first, which I have previously mentioned. This album was being written and recorded at a time when one of Nick's sons died in a tragic accident. When I think he fell off the cliff, the White Cliffs down in Brighton or Dover or somewhere, not sure, but somewhere up there, and yeah, died tragically very young. So a lot of this album was rewritten and re-recorded to include the themes of loss, death and grief that he was feeling at the time he was doing this, with his son dying. It's a heart-wrenching listen. A lot of people find this unlistenable, but once you get your head around it, you get used to it. It's majestic. It's one of those albums that actually, when you get it, it brings tears to your eyes. It is really, really well done. Great album. 8 out of 10. And obviously the black cover is like the death thing as well. Mourning. Number 11 on my list, we have the third installment in the electronica / ambient / avant-garde / electronica trilogy. This is Ghostin. This was released in 2019. This one expands on Skeleton Tree with its themes of loss and grief. This one adds the feelings of acceptance of loss, and even hoping and holding on that there is something after death where they can meet again. The songs are very ethereal and angelic in places. Absolutely fantastic album. I'd like to say it's a masterpiece. It could well be there. It's just outside the top 10, but it grows every time you listen to it. You hear something different. Great album. 8.4 out of 10. As we head into the top 10 of my favourite Nick Cave albums, number 10, 1994's Let Love In. Post-punk, gothic rock, lots of strings throughout this album. A great album. Interesting because the likes of Metallica, Arctic Monkeys, PJ Harvey and Martin Gore from Depeche Mode have all covered songs from this album. So it shows you how eclectic Nick Cave's fan base is. If you've got electronica people like Depeche Mode, to thrash metal of Metallica, alt rock of Arctic Monkeys, etc., listening to this guy and wanting to record his songs, it shows you how good he is with writing songs that can be translated in various different styles as well. Great album. Best tracks on here for me would be Do You Love Me, Lover Man, Red Right Hand, and Let Love In. Great album. This one comes in at 8.5 out of 10. Next up at number 9 on my list, 2008's Dig, Lazarus Dig. This is his commercial album. This is the album where I think he really wanted to get commercial. He wanted a radio friendly hit. He wanted radio friendly songs. And the songs are catchy and jaunty along the way on this album. It really is a commercial sounding album. It's an easy album to get into. It's probably a good place to start with your Nick Cave collection, because you do get the typical Nick Cave lyrics, plus you get it easy listening. It's easy to absorb as a first album. This shouldn't work. Nick Cave being commercial should not work in any way, shape or form, but somehow this works really well. Best tracks for me would be the title track, Dig Lazarus Dig. You got Today's Lesson, Night of the Lotus Eaters, and We Call Upon the Author to Explain. More News from Nowhere as well. I could just go on and on with the rest of these albums from here. Every track is just boom boom, well worth the entrance fee. But yeah, great album. If you want to get into Nick Cave, probably Murder Ballads album, which is coming up shortly, and this one, the two that you really want to possibly get into. That one comes in at 8.7 out of 10 for me. Next up, number 8, we're going to head to 1988. Tender Prey. This is country orientated. Probably gothic country might be a way to explain it, because he's not joyous country. He is gothic, and it has got country elements. It's bluesy, and it's also gothic rock. Lots of internal band issues during the recording of this album. Some members wouldn't turn up on certain days because they were drunk, under the influence, etc. Then they would turn up the next day, and then they'd leave. And Nick Cave's life was spiraling out of control. He had his own personal issues at this stage as well, and it was just a chaotic mess. It should never have happened. This album does lack direction, but once you get your head around the fact that, you know, all these negative and dark things were happening in the studio and in their personal lives, you get this album. You just absolutely get it, and it works on every level. But until you understand what was going on at that time, you really don't get it. This song does contain his so-called signature tune, The Mercy Seat, which Johnny Cash, one of his idols, did actually record on one of his American albums that Rick Rubin produced. So I believe he did The Mercy Seat on one. I should know, I've got all those albums. But yeah, The Mercy Seat is one you might want to check out, by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, considering it is called his signature tune. Deanna is also another brilliant song, and City of Refuge, great album. 8.8 out of 10 for me. Next up, number 7 on my list, we're going to go to Henry's Dream. It's very bluesy. It's almost sing-along sea shanty in places too. The album explores love, lust and death. A lot of those references are throughout Nick Cave's albums, and they're just 3 of the mainstays of his career. I love the way that he takes old traditional styles of music like sea shanties, like the blues, etc., and he creates something unique that is unique to Nick Cave and his sound. Great stuff. Papa Won't Leave You, Henry. Go check that song out. I Have a Dream, Joe. Straight to You is an absolute masterpiece of a song. Brother My Cup is entry. Christina the Astonishing. Again, I can just go through every track and go listen to them. It's sheer brilliance. So yeah, great album. This one comes in at 9 out of 10, and there's still 6 albums to go, and I'm still at 9 out of 10. It shows you the genius of Nick Cave, in my opinion. Number 6 on my list, double album, Abattoir Blues with The Lyre of Orpheus. This was released in 2004. Abattoir Blues is a rock album. It's firmly planted in the rock genre. The Lyre of Orpheus is more subdued. It's an elegant collection of restrained yet well-crafted masterpieces with orchestration, strings, piano, etc. So this one's good. Depending on what mood you're in, you can just play whichever album you want, and it does actually work as a double album. If you play disc 1, disc 2 even of the CD, it works. It flows in from the end of the Abattoir Blues side to the beginning of the Lyre of Orpheus side. One of the greatest double albums ever, in my opinion. It's nearly all killer. There's no filler. The couple of tracks that aren't killer are still really good. 9.2 out of 10. So at number 5 on my list, we go to 2001, No More Shall We Part. Piano, strings, percussion, voice with a hint of guitar. Lyrically as good as anything written by Bob Dylan or Leonard Cohen. This is about as good as songwriting and lyricism gets. Absolute masterpiece. As I sat sadly by her side, and No More Shall We Part. 15 feet of pure white snow is absolutely brilliant. God Is in the House, you can't knock it. I mean, every song on here, oh my lord. The Sorrowful Wife, Gates of the Garden, sheer brilliance. Every song on this album is absolute killer. Great stuff. 9.4 out of 10. Number 4 on my list, most people would rank this at number 1. Murder Ballads. It's a concept album. Actually, all of his albums could be called concept albums, because the themes are all love, lust, death, you know, religious spirituality, etc. They could all just about be called concept albums, but this is technically a concept album. Guest appearances on here. Kylie Minogue was the surprise one. Pop Princess with the Prince of Goth, singing Where the Wild Roses Grow, which sort of has a similar sort of lyrical feel as Olivia Newton-John's Banks of the Ohio. Takes a lover to the stream and she kills him in the song, and in this one it's the other way around. He kills the Kylie Minogue character, but very similar to that lyrically, not musically, not up tempo. It's great song. Other guest appearances on here: PJ Harvey, Shane MacGowan from the Pogues. There's a couple of traditional folk songs on here. There's also a Bob Dylan cover, and that is of Death Is Not the End from his 1989 album Down in the Groove. Really good song. Bob Dylan's original's really good. Suits Nick Cave better because he knows how to sing death songs. So yeah, great album. 9.7 out of 10 for me. Number 3 on my list. This is going to surprise a hell of a lot of people. His debut album from 1979, Adore Door by the Boys Next Door. This is a new wave album. New wave through and through. The last track, Shivers. If you go on YouTube, that Boys Next Door, Shivers, it's absolutely brilliant. It shows you the genius of Nick Cave even on his first album, even though a lot of these songs are quite like immature-ish, I guess. It shows you what was in his head and what he was capable of doing in the future. As I said, it's a new wave album through and through. It's very poppy, it's very commercial, it's very up-tempo musically. There's verses and choruses, etc. Nick Cave himself calls it an immature album recorded by spotty-faced teenagers. It's a load of wank. I mean, yeah, I guess he can look back on that now and say it was with the career he's had, but I think it's a work of genius. It's so simple, it's so left field compared to what Nick Cave ended up doing, but it's just so brilliant. It's quirky, it's a bit novelty-ish, I guess, but I just love this album. I just can't get enough of it. Absolutely brilliant. Lynn was actually the one that put me onto this album. She said, oh, have I ever heard of the song Shivers? And I went, I can't recall it. I had, but I hadn't heard it for years. I didn't realise it was Nick Cave back in the day. But yeah, Lynn managed to get this album for me last year. But yeah, great album. This one comes in at 9.8 out of 10 for me, which is a big shock for a lot of people I know. Number 2 on my list, down to the final 2, we go to 1997, The Boatmans Call. This album is almost entirely made up of just piano and vocals, with the odd little other instrument in there on occasion, but it is primarily a piano vocal album. It's his breakup, heartbreak album. It was written as he was spiraling down after he split up from his fling at the time, PJ Harvey. It's very somber, it's very bleak, it's very introspective, but it does contain one of the greatest love songs ever written, Into My Arms. If you go after this, type in Nick Cave and Into My Arms, it's absolutely brilliant. You know, I could go through every other song on here and everyone is a mark of genius. Absolutely incredible. The songwriting and songmanship by Nick Cave, and the way he expresses his emotions and feelings in songs is just, it's second to none. Oh, excuse me. Absolutely incredible. You know, these albums in my top 10, the likes of Dylan and Cohen would just be absolutely in awe at the songwriting, I'm sure of it. So yeah, The Boatman's Call at number 2 comes in at 9.8 out of 10. My favourite Nick Cave album, a lot of people, I think this is okay, think it's good. It's never ranked anywhere near as high as what I rank it. But we go to 1985, and my favourite Nick Cave album of all time is The Firstborn Is Dead. The album features references to all things Deep South America. The title refers to Jesse Garon Presley, who was the stillborn twin brother of Elvis Presley, thus The Firstborn Is Dead. Wanted Man, the track Wanted Man on here is a rewrite of Bob Dylan's Wanted Man, with his own lyrics. Final track on the album is called Blind Lemon Jefferson. It's a tribute to the 1920s blues man, Blind Lemon Jefferson. The album is steeped in everything you would expect from southern blues songs: train wrecks, suicide, death, prisons, apocalyptic warnings about black crows and all the, you know, like the plague sort of thing. It's absolutely brilliant. It's almost sheer perfection in 40 minutes. Absolutely incredible. Probably not a good place to start your Nick Cave collection. It's very bluesy, there's harmonica, there's guitar, etc. It's just not, it's not a good place to start your Nick Cave collection, but to me, over the years, this is just absolutely incredible. Sheer brilliance of an album. It's almost perfection in just under 40 minutes. Great album. Can't knock it in any way, shape or form. Comes in at 9.9 out of 10. So there you go, folks. Sorry about that. Huge discography there of 23 albums. Sorry to bore you for almost the last 30 minutes. Well, it will be by the time I finish. Leave your comments in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite Nick Cave albums are. Have any of mine surprised you with their low rankings or higher rankings? Be interesting to know. Anyway, guys, stay safe. Take care. All for now. Catch you around, and bye, folks.